Welcome to the fourth conversation in our four-part series on this special edition of On Leadership, where we're discussing all things COVID-related as it relates to bringing employees back into organizations physically, and what are the leadership talents that we all need to see out of our people leaders going forward. I'm delighted joining us now is Lisa Stevens, who serves as the Chief People Officer for the global advisory firm Aon. Aon is a global company, offices in 120 countries, 50,000 employees. They specialize in professional services around retirement, income, insurance, human resource advisory. Joining us from Pasadena, California, Lisa, welcome to On Leadership.
Scott, it's an absolute pleasure to get to spend time with you today on this a very difficult topic.
Hey, I'm delighted you're here. Looking forward to this kind of capstone conversation. Candidly, Lisa, as you and I were getting to know each other off the air, prior to this interview, I uncovered a couple of confluences in your life that have happened that I think has built a special awareness and empathy in you. Would you just take a few moments and kind of reconstruct the conversation we had around some of the things that you have faced in your immediate and extended family that has, I think, probably made you a better leader at Aon and probably a better parent and family member in the midst of this pandemic?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we went into lockdown in California back in the middle of March, and I am the proud mom of 3 kids. I have a 21-year-old son, a 19-year-old daughter, and a 15-year-old daughter. And my 2 oldest ended up coming home from college. So they both came here. And in the very first week, we dealt with Wi-Fi issues and trying to figure out like who was going to be where and what we were going to be doing. I also, my husband, who is an extremely typically healthy guy, was having heart surgery. And because of COVID, that ended up getting delayed. So we've been dealing with that and trying to figure out when's the safest time to actually have that surgery. We're super hopeful and know he's going to end up being fine, but it's going to be a bit of a recovery. And then after we were in quarantine for, I want to say about a week and a half, my mom, who's up in Northern California, really needed to have more care. She's got some special needs. She's 80 years old. And so I drove up there 7 hours, picked her up and brought her back down here. And that was 10 weeks ago. So we've got a full house and it's been really interesting. And I would just say, when I talk to colleagues, I know everyone has a different story. Like some people are dealing with aging parents, they're school teachers for the very first time. They might be dealing with isolation. I think that's a really difficult one. And I've been somewhat fortunate to be able to be experiencing a lot of the different challenges that are going on. But it's also given me a lot of really great perspective as I think about what's happening around the world. I never would have gotten the time with my mom. And I turned 50 on March 18th. And I had said to everyone, the only thing I want is for my entire family to be together. Little did I know that it would be for this long, but there's been a lot of things that have come out of this that have been difficult, but extremely positive from a personal perspective. And then the last thing I think that was probably that had the largest impact was I had left New York on the 14th, and I have a brother who is a doctor in New York who came down with COVID. He's fine now. He actually just tested for the antibodies and is doing well, but he was very sick, and it was really scary to watch the impact of COVID and how long it takes to recover from it. So. Seen it up close and personal for sure, Scott.
Well, you also mentioned earlier too that your brother's partner, I think you said, also caught COVID with very different results. Just from your own personal experience, kind of contrast your brother's issue with COVID versus his partner's.
Yeah, so my brother had 103 plus fever for about 11 days, and his partner had a little bit of a headache and felt a little sick for a couple days. They both went and got the antibody test about a week and a half ago and have the same levels of antibodies. So clearly they both had it and just completely contrasted in terms of the impact. It's fascinating, but definitely a live case right in front of us.
Lisa, how has the confluence of all those events, being a parent of 3 children, some home from college, your husband's health, your mother's health, your brother and his partner's health. How does that impact the way you lead as the chief people officer of a global company thriving, hopefully, in a pandemic?
I think that this is where you really have to focus on your own emotional intelligence, or I like to think of it, one of my favorite authors is a gentleman named Shirzad Chamine, who wrote a book called Positive Intelligence. And it's really having insight, being authentic, being curious, asking questions. So when we do meetings, we try to make sure we check in with people really quickly to see how they're doing, give them an opportunity to talk a little bit about, some of the different challenges that are going on. Like, I never thought that I was going to have to do, fifth grade math again, or trying to figure out, how to cook for the first time. But all those little things up front, I think, really matter in listening to people and understanding that everybody's journey is a little bit different. The other thing that I would say that I've had the opportunity to do is to watch colleagues when we talk to each other, how you can shift people's mindsets, again, in your perspective. So you can look at something, and some things are, again, really hard, and it's not going to change it. But the way that you come about it and what your attitude is can really make a difference. And when you're in something day in and day out, that can be difficult. And so it requires a lot of empathy, a lot of listening skills, and just understanding, again, that we can't solve, and we all, I think, as leaders, we want to solve everything. And we're at a place where it's such an unprecedented, uncertain time. We don't get to solve. So we have to use a lot of other skills that maybe we haven't had to use as much before. The one other thing I'd just say is with my personal situation, it's made me extremely grateful to be at an organization where we care so much about the 50,000 colleagues we have and how we care for them. And I'm one of those colleagues and lucky enough to get to lead people. But it's definitely been a journey.
You use the word colleagues, I'm guessing, very deliberately. I'm suspecting that's part of your culture. These 50,000 colleagues, I'm also guessing that they weren't working from home 90 days ago. What happened at Aon globally to prepare people to transition to a virtual environment? What were some successes and perhaps some challenges before we get into what the future looks like? Talk a bit about what the disruption was like at Aon.
So it was actually, we had, our team has been pretty phenomenal in terms of how quickly we switched and transitioned from having the majority of our colleagues that were working in an office to working from home. So incredible virtual capability that started right away. So I would say within the first few days, we started to get really good at doing this, at communicating this way, at doing group meetings. So we were prepared that way. And then I think the other thing that we were able to do was really quickly too, to understand that when you do this, you could end up doing it 12, 14 hours a day. You're living where you work or working where you live, depending upon how you look at it. And so we started making sure people were finding protected time. Our CEO, within the first couple of days, got on his iPhone and started sending out iPhone messages to colleagues to make sure to give them updates about things that were happening. So we moved pretty quickly. We also recognized, again, that there were lots of challenges that people hadn't been faced with before. So we put in place, more sick time, more opportunities to help, again, with childcare and getting resources out to people as quickly as we could. We launched an app called Well One, which we actually provide to our clients in different parts of Europe, and we launched it at Aon for all 50,000 colleagues, which is it's a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual application that you can use to set goals. You can create communities with it. We've done mental wellness seminars. We had a mental wellness seminar a couple weeks ago. We had 3,000 colleagues that signed up for it. So we've been trying to respond as quickly as possible, and we really haven't missed a beat in terms of interacting with clients. Our clients are, we've been able to connect with them. The other thing that I would just say is that we've seen teamwork has been really critical in terms of really rallying around what our clients' needs right now, because they keep changing and evolving. And so we have to evolve with them and make sure that we're there for them. So it's been difficult, but it's also in some ways, out of, again, this very hard situation, there's been some pretty incredible things that have happened. We like to think of this as as the new, can this be the new better for us? How do we make sure that this is, that we go into this with an attitude of good things coming out of it?
I like that phrase, this is the new better versus this is the new normal. I'm gonna quote you on that. Lisa, I don't have the whole history of Aon, but I would love to have you maybe recreate. My sense is your company has grown superbly both by organic growth and by some acquisition. You've had some acquisitions even as of late. Have there been any unique challenges that you faced where you've just recently closed on some new acquisitions and how you've had to manage through expectations, mismatched ideas on how we should do things on our company versus the new company? Talk us through any of that others might relate to.
I think the biggest thing right now, again, with the uncertain times, has been communication and making sure that we communicate. It's been difficult, to hit every single milestone or expectation of timelines, because a lot of things got put on hold or there was a change in how things were doing. So I think that's one thing. So communication has been really critical. And then again, I think it goes back to spending time being super curious, listening, understanding where people are coming from, other organizations are coming from, what they're dealing with. The one thing is there isn't a roadmap for this. So there isn't a company that's been through this before. So we're all going through it maybe in different ways. And so it's just trying to understand that and trying to be supportive.
Lisa, let's get practical for a moment. So you have a lot of facilities, a lot of offices. Can you talk through what's Aon doing in terms of your own preparation for the reentry plan? Do you have a sense and a timeline for what that looks like? What are some of the key issues you're discussing and protocols that you're putting in place that our listeners and viewers can learn from and perhaps calibrate or adapt to their own organization?
So Scott, I'm really happy that you did not say return to work, because I know that
we're working.
That acronym, I'm like, wait a minute, you can't say return to work. Everybody's been working. So we actually have been doing quite a bit for our clients also. So trying to help them to figure out again, what's the right time to maybe re-enter into your offices. Will it look the same? Can it look different? So a couple of things I say, again, thinking the new better is, how do you reimagine things? I think one of the things that we've realized is that we're very good at working virtually and that we can connect with people. That doesn't replace, the human interaction. I think everybody likes to have that, but there are some incredible efficiencies that can come out of it. We've had, so we're doing a lot for our clients. So as we're working for our clients, I'm actually a client of Aon. So Aon is helping me to figure out, all right, how are we going to re-enter into our office spaces? So we're obviously taking the lead of the municipalities and the states in terms of, when is it going to be safe to return? And then we're also making it very clear to our colleagues that they can return when they're comfortable and they're ready. We started doing pulse surveys right away within, I want to say the second week in April, to hear from our colleagues about concerns. We also have been doing surveys by geography and by offices. So in Asia, we have a couple of offices that have opened. New Zealand is opening up this week. We've had Singapore open and close. So we've watched this cycle happen. I think that the big thing is really understanding where people are at. And it's not just returning to the office that you have to think about. And this is what our colleagues are telling us. It's, how am I going to get there? Do I have to get on a train to get there? Right. My kids don't have school. What am I going to do with my kids during the day? I've kind of created this new environment. Then there's the other side of it, which is the colleagues that are ready to go back and they're desiring to go back. So we're really trying to figure out how do we reimagine ourselves and rethink, what the traditional mindset would have been before of everybody has to go back to, are we more efficient and more effective in some cases working virtually? And absolutely the answer is yes in many cases. So there isn't a one size fits all, Scott, but I will say that you have to kind of go geography by geography and really understand. And at the forefront of it all is the safety of our colleagues and their families. So we're not going to make any decisions that would ever put anyone in harm's way.
I hear a couple of things in there. One is that there may be some colleagues at Aon that once went to an office every day, and that they might actually be empowered or choose to work virtually in the future, even when it's safe to come back to the office if that's what works best for them and for their contribution. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And then I'm guessing there
100%.
are some colleagues that will choose to come back in a physical facility. Can you speak to what it looks like? You know, what does the office, I lived in Chicago for 6 years. I passed the Aon building there every day on the way downtown to the Franklin Covey office, like a beautiful building there. What is that going to look like when it's open? Do you think you'll have temperature checks and thermal scanners and different, will cubicles be here? Can you speak to how conference rooms will change, and will there be cafeterias? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, a couple things. And one of the really important parts of our interaction is with our clients also. So we spend a lot of time with our clients, so going to their places of business. And so we have to solve for that as well. So when we have colleagues go visit a client, you know, we have to make sure that we're supporting the protocols of that business.
Right.
But honestly, I don't know exactly what it will look like. I will tell you what we're seeing now is where we're opening. We're opening again. Colleagues are going in with flex schedules, so maybe they'll work a day or two in the office, and then they'll work from home the other days. So when we say we're opening up an office, maybe 10% of the colleagues will come back. I heard from one of my peers. They said maybe offices will become collaboration centers. That will be where we go to collaborate, because the reality is there is so much that we can do from a digital and a virtual perspective. And this exponentially moved us to that quicker. I also think for us, you know, we've been on this journey around Aon United, which is really about, you know, one firm around all around our clients and helping them to be successful. And there's really only two jobs in our firm. We say this all the time. You're either serving clients or you're serving people who serve clients. And so we're going to have to adapt, be nimble and flexible, and figure out, you know, what's going to work, because our clients are changing too. They don't have the exact answer to, you know, how are they going to be returning. We're looking at those things too. So Aon has the ability through data and analytics to look at that and to be able to help our clients make those decisions too. So just like they'll tell me, like, here's a group of people that really never need to return. Like they could work virtually forever if they choose to. And I think a lot of this is going to be about putting some of those choices in front of the colleagues in the beginning, at least, just because we need to make sure people are comfortable. In terms of the question around temperature checks and those things, I think that will depend upon each state, each municipality, whether there's an elevator, whether it's a large building, whether it's, you know, all those things there's going to be a lot to that. And we've got a phenomenal chief risk officer who will lead us through that.
Listening to you, it's the only word I can think of is surreal. And I used this word on one of the previous interviews because, you know, I'm almost 52. I've been around the block, not through a pandemic, obviously, but when you really kind of take in the gravity of the situation, it can overwhelm you. What advice would you give to otherwise resilient leaders like me, right, that are people like you, that when you really face the enormity of the impact, the disruption, the trauma, the death, the fear, the panic, how do you encourage people, otherwise very competent, resilient leaders, to kind of keep it going?
So there are a couple of things. You know, our CEO, the first week that he did his iPhone message to us, and it was so authentic and real. So I think that's one, is being authentic and real. But he shared three things, which was, you know, we were always going to keep our colleagues, our clients in our firm at the front of every decision we were going to make. The second thing was that we were going to stay in reality and be very strong on, like, here's the reality of where we're at, and be honest with that. And then finally, focus on what you can control. There's a lot we can't control, but there's a lot we can control. And so this is really a lesson in that, I think, for leaders, is we have to make that decision to really rise to understand the reality of what we're in, but also be able to create places for people to go to feel like they're being productive, that that we can move to something that's better. Like out of this, something better can happen. And the only way that will happen will be by the decisions that we make now, which do come with, again, they come with lots of different challenges, but there are some really good things that will have come out of this in terms of how we work, as long as we're looking to that. And I think that's the biggest thing is making the decision, and this is a good, I was talking to a colleague and I wasn't having a great day. And, you put on the face as a leader. I called him up and I said, how are you doing? And he looked great. And he's like, I'm walking on a treadmill he put his laptop on the treadmill and he's like, I'm walking on the treadmill. I've lost all this weight. And he said, and I get to see my kids every day and I get to have dinner with them every night. And just that was like, it was different than him, saying, oh my gosh, my kids. And that doesn't mean you don't have those moments, but he clearly made a decision to see the bright side of it. I'm certainly not Pollyanna about how difficult this is, but I think as leaders, we have to find that ability to say, okay, where's the good things that come out of this?
That's a shaming story, because I'm not looking forward to seeing my kids again for lunch and dinner tonight. I could use a break from them. But I've got 3 boys, 6, 8, and 10, and they all have my personality, so my wife's ready to flee right now. Lisa, final question.
You get a lot from her on Mother's Day.
yeah. Mother's Day was, as I was informed, it was... she felt it was more like Father's Day than Mother's Day, to quote her. So I bought her a Peloton. So unfortunately, it's like 3 months delayed. So Mother's Day is not coming until July. Let me ask you this final thought. Fast forward 18, 24 months. Let's say that we have a vaccine and that it's not reemerged, the virus, and that things are calming down. Speak to the competencies of the future workforce at Aon and beyond. What are some competencies that you think we're all going to need to show more of, dig deeper in, that perhaps right now we maybe take for granted and don't demonstrate as much? What does the thriving workforce of the future look like to you?
So I think leaders are definitely going to have to be more authentic and real. And you can't completely separate your personal life from your professional one. Doesn't mean, we have to disclose everything, but I think the empathy piece, being authentic is one. And that can be, there's all sorts of really incredible things that can come out of that. I think team building is going to be huge. So how you build teams so that if you're an incredible individual contributor and you've done a really good job and you're managing individual contributors, that can be great. But I think in this environment, that ability to collaborate and work with other people, it becomes more critical than ever. And so as we think 18, 24 months down the road, how are we going to make sure we're building high performing teams? So that's going to be a really important skill to me, is what are you doing to build high performing teams that work well together, where you're centering your goals? So I think goal setting is going to be a really big deal. How do you set your goals differently in this new better? How do you think about things? And then what are the things that exponentially can happen to really shift businesses? And for Aon, I think for us, we're going through a major integration with Willis Towers Watson. We have an incredible opportunity as an organization, as 2 organizations, to come together in a very different way. We're meeting and greeting virtually. And so 18, 24 months from now, when we're one organization, what we can provide to our clients from this experience of how to problem solve, how to think about, okay, how do you do things differently than you've done before? Being really super creative it's going to be big. And so again, there's, like you said, it's surreal, but there's a lot that can come out of this that will be extremely powerful for our organization and for many organizations over time. And again, I say that over time because I think that until there is a vaccine or some type of treatment, we just don't know exactly how things are going to go, and we've got to stay nimble and flexible.
Lisa Stevens, Chief People Officer from Aon, thank you for joining us. We wish your mother great health. Thank your brother and his partner for their service to the New York City survivors as well. And for those, I'm sure they've had a fascinating time, right, to share. Glad your brother is doing well. And great success with your husband's coming heart surgery. You're going to come out of this stronger because there's no other choice, right? You got a lot.
That's exactly right.
A lot going on. Thank you for your time. Delighted to have you on our 4-part segment today.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for joining you. By far our longest interview series in our 100+ episodes. We hope this was valuable. 4 separate interviews. If you're not subscribing to On Leadership, please visit franklincovey.com. Click on the On Leadership tab, subscribe, rate it, rank it, review it. Now the world's largest weekly podcast dedicated to the topic of leadership. And we'd love to have you be part of that family every week. Hope you find this valuable. Stay safe, and we'll see you back here next week.